All right, welcome, my friend, to the next episode of the Red Delta Project Podcast live feed Q&A here. Of course, can't talk. I just got off of a big bike ride, and I'm kind of a little hazy right now. I'm like, where am I? What's going on here? Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at letsgetchecked.com, the internet's leading source for in-home testing for all things. I've done it recently for testing my testosterone levels. You can do it for vitamin and minerals and other conditions for the body. Link is down below if you want to check that out. And of course, by the books that I write for Red Delta Project as well. There's links down below to each one of those, including Smart Bodyweight Training, Grind Style Calisthenics, and of course, Fitness Independence, the original. So today's topic, we're talking a bit more about these subliminal messages that permeate our fitness culture that can really kind of cause us to shoot ourselves in the foot. And I really get into this sort of thing every once in a while. I've done several episodes on this because a lot of our potential to make or break whatever results you want, weight loss, building muscle, improving your bowling game, whatever you want, really comes down to a lot of these subliminal messages that we have kind of circulating through our minds. And if we don't address and become aware of them, they'll create this self-sabotaging loop every single time. So let's get right into it then. The first subliminal message where we need to go with is this idea that you have to suffer for your results. And it's kind of, I know that's a little bit of a generalization there, but the idea is that losing weight and building muscle and whatever we're trying to do is supposed to be this like long, arduous, uphill blood, sweat, and tears battle that we just keep fighting. And it's, I know, a little bit of a weird idea to think of why would anybody embrace this, but my research and just experience over the years in fitness shows that we tend to go after whatever promises us the most difficult uphill battle we can use. Whenever I have folks in parties and stuff, they say, Matt, what can I do to improve my fitness? What can I do to start getting in better shape? I always say, okay, let's start off with something easy. Let's start off gradual, nice. Let's do things that are really easy for you to jump into. They never want to hear it. They're like, I don't want easy. I don't want slow and steady wins a race. I want blood, sweat, and tears. I want to suffer for my results, as if that's going to be the way to go. And I think a lot of this comes just down to a lot of the messages that we're exposed to in the media and social media. People who are like lying on the floor and they're exhausted, and little fitspiration things about how you're supposed to sweat like a pig if you want to look like a fox and everything. And this doesn't mean that getting in shape isn't going to be challenging and that you're going to have to face a few demons along the way. It's certainly going to be hard, but it builds this idea that the hard way is the way to go. And I certainly used to fall for this many years. In fact, if I was trying to do something, I'd always be looking at like, how can I just make myself suffer more while doing this? How do I make myself suffer more on my bike ride? Well, don't bring any water. Okay, that's a good start. Don't wear gloves or any protective gear, so you get lots of blisters and stuff. Okay, good. Go at the hottest time of the day. Like, I didn't have a game plan. I didn't know what I was doing. My whole approach was just somehow make yourself more miserable at it. Whatever diet approaches leave you feeling cravings and hungry and deprived are the ways of, quote, a healthy diet. That was my whole approach because I thought harder is better. And when people who knew better would tell me things like, Matt, take it easy, like scale back a little bit. If you're tired, give yourself some rest. If you're hungry, eat some more food. It's okay. Be like, no, I don't want to hear it kind of thing. Just like those individuals at the party would say, I don't want to hear it. Okay, yeah, whatever kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is that in order to greatly enhance your ability to get what you want, we need to make this stuff as easy as possible. We need to make it the path of least resistance. We need to make it so that you have to put as little effort and excruciating agony into your diet and exercise habits as you can. Any chance you have of making this easier is a step forward. And I'm sure right there, I've lost a lot of you right there because you're like, no, this isn't easy. I'm like, no, I'm not saying it is. But when we have unnecessary friction between us and the habits we need to keep, all you're doing is holding yourself back. You're not going to make it easier to get results. You're just making it harder to do that. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do my homework now and I'm going to make sure that my computer is slow and I can't read the book because the lighting is bad and I don't understand. In no place in life is the path of most resistance more productive for helping you get success. Anytime you can make it easier to be more productive, you will make it easier to gain and maintain that success. So that's the first myth, is suffering for results is the way to go. Decrease that suffering as much as humanly possible. Again, of course, it's going to be hard. I just did 2 laps on Green Mountain earlier, and that's going up some fairly steep terrain to the point where you're just barely pulling the pedals, and I'm kind of rocking back and forth trying to stay. Heart rate is pinned on some of those climbs. I'm not saying that was easy, but there's a big difference between this sucks, it's suffering, this isn't any fun, and oh, this is challenging, but at least I've got this. Monumental difference. So we don't want to suffer. Second myth that kind of goes along with this one is that we have to somehow force our progress and force our results. Think of times in your life where you've been trying to make something happen and you try to force it. You try and, like, especially when we're younger, right? And we want to talk to that someone we've got a crush on in school or something, or we're trying to get a good job and we're trying to kind of force our way into the door. Usually it doesn't work out so well. And if it does, it's a lot of effort. And we usually don't make the best impression. It's awkward and it's really kind of weird and stuff like that. Versus other times where you meet someone at a party or just in life and you just click and it's like, oh, it's so easy to talk to this person. Or you're interviewing for a job and you and the interviewer just click and they say, can you do X, Y, and Z? It's like, not only can I do it, I won a national award for it or something. Easy is the way to go in those scenarios. So the reason why this is important is because oftentimes when we think we've got to force ourselves to do something, we think we're on the right path. But usually what that means is we need to kind of regroup and reassess and say, okay, I'm missing something here. There's something about this that I don't know, or I'm not prepared for. I don't have a skill. There's something we still need to bring to the table because it shouldn't be quite that forced. In the past couple episodes, we were talking about how, when are you ready for progression? When are you ready for the next step? When can you advance your fitness plans? And the answer I usually get is you should feel like you're kind of hungry for it. Like you should feel like, oh yeah, this is definitely something I want to do today. So case in point, in my ride today, when I ride Green Mountain out here, I usually do 1 lap. It's just 1 lap, it's down, around, up the climb, and then back down. And that's usually about an hour, maybe a little bit less and so forth. And it's a pretty good ride, a good after work ride. And I come back, I'm like, okay, yeah, that was a good ride, feeling really good, go home, have dinner, and so on. But today I did my 1 lap, and afterwards I was like, feels good, but I really kind of want to keep going. Like the legs are feeling really strong today. So I did another lap. I did a second up and down. It was fantastic. It was a great ride. And I went and I had the ability to do more and progress because I was in a situation where I got good sleep. I had some good food. I was just feeling stronger in my legs, whatever the case may be, but it wasn't forced. I didn't say, Matt, you'd better do 2 laps. It's like, really don't want to do this. I feel like crap, because yesterday I was thinking of riding. But yesterday I had a hard day at work. I had moved a friend's weight machine 2 days early. I was just tired, exhausted. I had a headache, stuff. I'm like, this feels forced. It feels like I'm forcing myself to ride today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And I guarantee you, if I did that, I would have only done 1 lap and it would have been a pretty struggle lap, right? But today, because I regrouped, I came back and everything, and I was like, this is feeling really good. It wasn't forced. It wasn't forced at all for me to ride, nor was it forced for me to do 2 laps instead of the 1. So usually when we have too much friction and we feel like we're just beating our heads against the wall, that's a sign that something's still not quite right. It's not a sign that you're on the right path. It's not a sign of get outside your comfort zone. We hear that a lot of things, and there's merit to that saying, of course. But oftentimes you want to make progression as comfortable as possible. You want to make it feel like you're hungry for the next step or hungry for the results that you're going after. Because a lot of times when people struggle to get what they want, they force themselves to follow the diet. They force themselves to work out super hard and so forth for several weeks, maybe a couple months. This is what people do all the time during New Year's. And because it's forced and because they buy into the idea that they've got to be struggling, you can't last very long like that. It's kind of like treading water with wearing a weight vest. It's like, this is the way it's got to be. And of course, you just exhaust yourself and you sink. It's like, well, I tried as hard as I could and I couldn't make it happen. Yeah, that's the reason why it didn't happen, because you were constantly trying as hard as you possibly could. You made it a struggle. You tried to force it. Instead, scale back to the point where you want to have habits. You want to have things that say, oh yeah, I can definitely do that. It's not really that hard. Which brings us to point number 3. And point number 3 is that you constantly have to be pushing your limits. You constantly have to be pushing yourself to the brink of what you're capable of in order to continue moving forward. And the reason why this doesn't work very well is it's just simple economics. It's just down to, like in financial things, they say, don't live paycheck to paycheck. Live within your means. You hear this all the time. Live within your means. That way, at the end of the month, you're not at your very limit and you're not prepared for emergencies or something like, oh, I got to fix the tires in the car. That's $200 I didn't have before. You live within your means, so that way you've got a little left over and a little left over, and you can build up some savings, and then you can take some of that and you can invest it and you can build yourself up, and that's how you get out of the rat race, right? Well, it's the exact same thing in fitness, is this idea of when you go to the gym, you leave it all in the gym. And when you're doing your diet, you push yourself as hard as you can and you restrict your diet as much as you can, as go hard as possible. And again, it's any wonder why we struggle to just keep going. And instead, you want to finish your workouts. You want to have a diet. You want to constantly be saying, I didn't quite go 100%, 110% and stuff. Didn't quite go that far. I went to like 90%, even though I did 2 laps around Green Mountain. When I was going up the fire road, which is just like death race kind of climb, I was like, I'm at like 90%. I could be going a little bit faster and harder, but no, I'm not going to. I'm going to go at like 90%. My heart rate's still like really high and stuff, but I could be going just a tiny little bit better, but I'm going to scale back just a bit. And for the exact same reason, you manage your resources, because sometimes when you're doing your exercises and stuff, you're just not going to have as much left. So stay and play within your means. And yes, sometimes there are times to put it to the limit. If I was in a race, that would be a different story. I would be going to my absolute limit. If I was in a push-up contest, or if I needed to pass a PT test or something, to the limit, absolutely. Know when to put the pedal to the floor. There's a time and the place for that, but that's not your normal MO. Going to your limit and pushing as hard as you can is not the way to go, because you're constantly just living paycheck to paycheck, figuratively speaking. You're going to your limit, so it's going to take nothing to go over that limit. And then you get sick, then you get burned out, then you get injured, then all these sorts of things. It's kind of like racing to the edge of a cliff and stopping just short of the cliff and going, okay, very good. It's going to take nothing to go over the cliff to bad things. So you want to say, I'm going to run and I'm going to stop well short of that cliff. I could go a little further, but let's not. And that's how you keep this whole thing going. So you're not struggling, you're not forcing progression, and you're living well within your means as far as your energy level, your schedule, and all these other sorts of things. Makes it so much easier to get what you want, because none of these things will guarantee you get what you want. What guarantees what you want is the progression of those things. You can be well within your means. You don't have to make it a struggle, and you don't have to push yourself and force the type of results. As long as something's improving throughout your diet and your workouts, like, oh, that was better than before, that's where the results come from. And you don't need to struggle to force it or to go to your limit all the time in order to make that happen. So there you go, 3 subliminal beliefs. Really wish I knew those things back in the day, but let's get to some of your questions here. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. It's really not appreciated. First one coming on up right on the screen. And again, I'm on my phone because the internet's just better on my phone here. Hopefully the quality is decent for you folks, but not a fitness question coming on, but how are you doing? I enjoy your podcast, and thank you very much for asking. I'm doing a heck of a lot better now. I got my new place. I got my new home gym. I think some people are asking this because I had a very long standing bout with COVID earlier this year, and I'm finally on my feet, but feeling really good. Yeah, just all overall very good. Very excited for some of the projects that I'm working on for RDP. Thank you so much for asking. All right, next question up. Hey, Matt, I'm so tired, My weight stopped like months, like I guess you're saying a weight plateau. Now I have still 10 kilograms to lose. My training diary telling me I don't progress a year. What do I do? I'm trying to be just consistent besides it all. So yeah, I mean, welcome to the normal state of everybody. One of the things that's interesting about our fitness culture is most of the diets and the workout programs and the expectations we have and stuff, almost all of this stuff is geared at beginners, people in their first 6 months to a year or so of their journey. And why do I say that? Is because so much of the rhetoric out there is things that people can only expect in the introductory phases of their training career. Things like add 5 pounds to the barbell every week, lose 1.2 pounds per week or something like this. You know, this constant, say, progression. This is beginner territory. People who have been in this industry and have been doing things for several years now understand that you're, for the most part, if you look at your training career on a long timeline of, let's say, 40 years, most of your change is going to happen in that first inch, in that first 6 months to a few years. Most of your time, you're not going to be making any real big significant changes in your body, your performance, or your weight. And don't let me discourage you or anything. That's actually a good thing, because we are going to find this place where we kind of maintain. So it sounds like you're finally getting out of those introductory beginner stages. So here's the mentality you want to have with this. One is recognize that for the most part in your training career, you're not going to be making big changes in your body. You're not going to be losing noticeable weight on the scale. You're not going to be making big changes in the gym and stuff. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's going to happen with exponentially higher levels of effort and work. So a lot of like bodybuilders, athletes and stuff, they'll recognize this, where they're hovering around 80% of their potential. And then it's like, oh, okay, time to get ready for a contest. And they'll be like, all right, I have no life for the next 6 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever. I'm going to eat like crazy. I'm going to train like crazy. My social life is going to suffer. I've got to get ready for the championship contest or whatever. And then they get that last 20% and they maximize it. But they recognize you can't maintain that. It's kind of like scaling up Mount Everest, right? You can be going up in elevation and be okay. But at a certain point, you recognize that the clock is ticking for how long you can be at that altitude. And you've spent a lot of time preparing, and your whole goal is we're going to get up there, but then we're immediately going to come back down. We're not going to stay up there. It's the exact same thing with the higher levels of what you can accomplish. You can get there, but you can't stay there just because it's simply not practical. It's not something you can do and live anything close to a normal life and have a healthy body. So what you're doing is you're getting to the point where you've got to start to now feel comfortable with where you're at. Plateaus are something that is an opportunity to become more efficient and to kind of solidify your progress. The big mistake people make is they go up, they stop moving, and then they come back down and they just quit. Like, no, you're supposed to stay there and get used to that. Again, with the Mount Everest analogy, you climb up, then you stop at base camp and you stay there because you acclimatize to that level. And you go up and you acclimatize. And even actually when you climb Mount Everest, I didn't know this until several months ago, but you actually go up and then down several times. People who climb Mount Everest have actually scaled most of the mountains several times in a single attempt at the summit, because your body just can't go up in one shot. You have to acclimatize. And sometimes you're like, no, we're still too high, come back down. And it's like, okay, now we're ready for something higher. So now you're in that phase. Now you're in the more advanced stages. So getting comfortable with where you're at, still make progressions where and when you can, but it's going to be small things. It's going to be the stuff that isn't going to be very noticeable. Like, can you add spices or tweak your recipes so the food is more satisfying? Is it going to matter in your weight? No, but you're trying to make it easier to stay where you are. Having a healthy diet, and like, it's easier for me to eat healthy because you're learning better recipes, for example. You're listening to your body when it really is hungry versus not hungry, sort of thing. Improving your workout techniques, getting that last inch in your range of motion. Again, does it really matter very much? No, but this is the small little tweaks and stuff that are helping you acclimatize to where you are. And then it's going to be weird, but eventually you will be saying, okay, now I can go to the next level because you've acclimatized to where you are. So it doesn't mean anything is wrong at all, but you're still in that phase. and still keep making small progress. But most of your progression right now is going to be seemingly small things that doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot. And then eventually you're going to get there. I know that was a long answer. There's a lot to dig into that one. I should do another podcast on long-term progress in fitness and long-term success, because like I said, it's very much not addressed in fitness. Most of the stuff out there is geared towards beginners, what you would expect to beginners and how you would address diet and exercise, because it's not sexy. Like the sexy stuff in fitness is in the first several months to a couple of years. But long-term fitness is not at all sexy. It's not something that's going to sell programs, and that's why you never hear about it. Anyway, yuck you. I like that screen name. After finding your channel, learning about micro workouts, I'm really enjoying implementing them on my training. What is your opinion on doing micro workouts in a circuit training style? Absolutely. I mean, circuit training, it's not the biggest change in what's going on. It's not like doing something straight sets versus circuit training is going to make any real difference. At the end of the day, you're still doing the same work. It's kind of like saying, should I eat my peas and then my steak, or should I eat a bite of peas and then a bite of steak, back and forth? At the end of the day, you're cleaning your plate. So I always like to use circuit training and straight sets based just on preference. What do you like to do? You know, some people just gravitate more towards one versus the other and just base it on that. A lot of our choices in fitness should just base largely on preference. Like, I don't know, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy doing? A personal preference is what's going to guide a lot of our ability to make things easier, not forced, and a lot more efficient over time. It's like, why do I do the exercise I do? Why do I have like 15 suspension trainers? Why do I have the body weight? I like it. That's literally the only reason I have these things. Now, I can do the same exercise. I could work my body the same way, 20 million different ways. Doesn't really matter how you do things. Doesn't matter what you do. As long as you're just satisfying the fundamental principles, you're going to end up with the same results. So it's like, yep, I'm progressively working your muscles. Great. Work out however the hell you want. Any kind of tool you want. Any exercises you want. Straight sets, split training, whole body training, everything else. And you'll get people all the time like, no, it matters. I'm like, okay, technically, you know, everything's going to be different. It's going to matter. But the real question is, does it matter to you? And a lot of times it really isn't going to matter. But if you say, I like circuit training more than straight sets with these micro workouts, go for it. And if you don't know, try them both. And then you're going to know, because you'll learn a lot more, of course, through your experience as well. Alex, very good. I'm glad you asked this question. Are your neuromass workout videos in the past are actually micro workouts? If no, what's the difference? Well, keep in mind, I keep a very loose definition of micro workouts. Micro workouts are a short workout, whatever you want to call that. Like some people, that's a half an hour workout. Some people, it's 2 minutes, you know, whatever you consider short. But the whole point of micro workout isn't about the time, actually. It's kind of a bit of a mislabeled thing. A micro workout is just something that's so focused and intent that you don't need a lot in order to accomplish your objective. So yeah, they are kind of like a micro workout, but a lot of those neuromass videos that I made in the past, keep in mind, there's a lot of editing to those. So I'm editing out the rest. I'm editing out some of the warm-ups and the preparations and stuff. So you're only seeing the meat of those workouts. So I think the neuromass workouts in the past would still take me about 30 to 40 minutes or so to go through. And in those videos, I think they're like 10 minutes, maybe 15 or so. So you're only seeing the bulk of it right there. You're not seeing a bunch of the other things there. So maybe sort of kind of, I know a lot of people would consider a half an hour workout short. For me, that's pretty much a standard workout. That's pretty par for the course, although I used to, you know, do 3-hour workouts and stuff. And now I'm like, what did you do for 3 minutes, Matt? Like, holy hell, I don't know how I'd do a 3-hour workout now if I had to. But don't get too hung up on the label. You know, basically whatever would be short would count. Hey, Matt, after some sessions of high volume pull-ups, very good, I feel my pecs more sore than my lats and arms. Can you explain the role the chest plays during pull-ups? Very good. I think I touched on this in my last video or the video that's coming up. But yeah, the chest does play a role in pull-ups, especially when your arms are closer, because when your arm is up, there is a bit of a stretch, particularly to the lower connections of your pectorals to your sternum. So it's stretched up. And then as you're pulling down, there is some role the chest is playing in the extension of the shoulder till you reach about this point here. And then it's no longer playing very much. But yeah, it's very good that you're experiencing that. The more muscle you involve in an exercise, the better. I don't understand. People are like, oh, I feel this working during this exercise. How do I get that to turn off? I'm like, no, still make it work. If a muscle is working, but like your hip flexors, for example, and you want your abs working, don't feel like, oh, if I turn off my hip flexors, my abs will work harder. No, we want it included. Work on inclusion, not isolation. It's a different word, but I'm blanking on it right now. Integration. Work on integration rather than isolation. Because the more everything works, the more, everything works. So get your chest involved, and that's going to be really good for helping stabilize your shoulders, stable shoulders, better back activation, biceps, and all those sorts of things as well. So you're on the right track. That's a very good thing. And it's not going to last very long, too. How an exercise feels and our muscular sensations are always changing. So whenever you do an exercise and you're like, wow, I really feel it in this muscle, or this muscle was sore the next day, enjoy that, because it's always going to be temporary. Because then, of course, you have adaptation. Some muscles get stronger and stuff, and then that ceases to be the weak link, and then you go and other muscles are working. So it's always a temporary thing, but it is good that your chest is working on those pull-ups. It's very, very good. Gabriel asking about ankle mobility. Very good. I use both assisted pistol squats, heel elevated pistol, my workout. Very good. In an equal number of sets. Do you think this is a balanced combination? I think it is. It's very good. The heel assisted pistol is a very smart way to go. I think that's very smart on your part. That's what I would have recommended. And mobility is the simplest way to work it is do things that require that mobility. So pistol squats, assisted squats, the lunges are always very good, because then you got your back leg kind of going with assisted, and then you're just shifting forward as much as you can. I admit I'm not the best expert on ankle mobility, largely because I've always had it, probably due to like my martial arts careers and stuff like that, doing a lot of deep stances, barefoot and stuff. Ankle mobility for me has always been really, really good. Never had any trouble with it. So it's one of those things of, if you've never had it, you're a poor teacher. If you've always had it, you're a poor teacher. If you've gained it, then you're a good teacher. And so I've never had to really gain it. But in general, mobility for the body is one of those things of, if you're doing strength exercise that requires stability and strength in a big range of motion, your body will allow that range of motion and allow that mobility to start to catch up. And it can take some practice. It can take quite a bit of practice. So keep up with those deep lunges and squats. That will help as well. Protein question coming on and hot from Xander. How can I get more protein in my diet apart from protein shakes? More food, dude. Simple as that. It doesn't really matter the sources. That's one of the latest videos that I came out with, which took a little bit of courage. Is it better plant-based proteins or animal-based proteins and stuff? And I was like, it doesn't really matter as long as you're getting it in, and then you're good. So the first question, though, is why do you need more protein? That's the first thing. Is what's making you think you need more? And there's a lot of messages in our fitness culture of more is always better. But protein doesn't get away from the fundamental principles of nutrition, because all things in nutrition are based off of utilization, consumption versus utilization. So consuming it, good, but only as long as your body can use it. Your body has a demand. Your body has a set demand for all nutrients. And so you're only going to benefit as long as you are further fulfilling that demand. Once you fulfill that demand, no more does any benefit to you whatsoever. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, are you falling short of your demand, your protein requirements? And of course, there's a million different ways to look at this, and there's a million opinions, and you're never going to find the answer on the internet. So do what I always do. Get your protein intake consistent, first and foremost. So I always just recommend just have some sort of protein source at each meal, right? Consistent intake, then double at least 1 or 2 meals worth of protein. So if you have like 3 eggs in the morning, have 6. If you're used to having beans and rice at dinner, a double portion, whatever that case may be. Notice if you have a difference there. If it should be pretty self-evident. If you double your portions of protein in a couple of meals and you're like, oh, I feel so much better, my workouts are better, I'm leaner and everything, good, now you're on the right track. But 9 times out of 10, nothing will happen because your body's like, dude, I got enough already. Like, more doesn't help you. If it's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife kind of deal, right? As long as you've got that requirements made, more isn't going to help you. If anything, it's going to be a bit of a detriment because now your body's got to deal with more calories and it's got to handle more things and so on. So those are the 2 things to do is make sure you have consistent protein intake throughout the day, increase it substantially. Don't be like, oh, I had 1 extra egg, like really increase it and see if there's a difference. And if there is, there's your answer. And if there's not, then you know, okay, I'm good. I've got that box checked. No need to worry about it anymore. Just make sure you're maintaining it. Oh, damn, I lost it. Where's that one? Something on, yeah, thanks, Alex. Your neck looks big. What is your routine if you have one? That's a funny question. I'm laughing because it's kind of an inside joke in the back of my mind because I made a neck training video, God, got to be 5 years ago now. Because Jeff Cavalier put out a video on how he doesn't like neck bridges. And I kept getting people emailing me saying, did you see what Jeff Cavalier said about neck bridges? Because they're in combat conditioning too. And he's like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? I'm like, all right, I don't even do neck training, but I got to address this. So I made a video saying Jeff doesn't like neck bridges because of the compression and the movement of the vertebrae with like tiny nerves and stuff, makes him nervous and stuff. I'm like, okay, so here's how you would train your neck without compression and without the movement kind of thing. And it's basically you just put your head against like an elevated surface, like a weight bench, and you do like a plank sort of idea. And I was like, okay, there you go, guys. If you're nervous about what Jeff is saying, do this instead. And man, I get so many comments on that. People saying like, your neck is so tiny. Why would we listen to you? I'm like, I don't train my neck. Like, this video is just a response video. Like, I don't do any sort of neck training. However, of course, we all train our necks, especially us in the calisthenics world. Because anytime we are placing our body in position relative to gravity, that's not this, okay? So side plank, rows, push-ups and stuff. Of course, our neck is working to hold our head up kind of thing. So we always get our neck trained to some degree in the calisthenics field because we're adjusting our body's position against gravity. And I honestly believe for a lot of people, that's plenty. That's more than enough than you need. Of course, training the neck as a specialty thing, it works better for wrestlers, fighters. I know people in the race car and automotive industry, because I mean, you take a corner at a couple of G's, your head is like, oh, your neck gets really sore. So in those cases, you need a much stronger neck. But for most people, when you're doing just normal calisthenics training, you'll get that taken care of. So thank you very much for recognizing. Much appreciated. Get some more questions on here. Let's see. More here. Good screen name here. Triple D, do you know anyone who builds muscle and doesn't eat much protein? Yeah, it happens quite a bit, actually. I used to know a guy who had a pretty decent amount, and it's kind of hard to validate because I don't know someone's diet. Like, I'm not asking people and stuff like that. But I knew a guy who was very strict on his diet. He had some sort of a digestive issue, had a couple of surgeries and stuff, so he couldn't eat really big, heavy foods a lot of times. So a lot of stuff was very, very light fare and stuff like that. He had a pretty good amount of muscle on his frame. Granted, he was 6'2" and everything, but he, by the looks of him, had a very low protein sort of diet and was still able to make that happen. And the anecdotal evidence that I always give people with this is like, no one ever says you need a high protein diet to grow your fingernails or grow your hair. I mean, figuratively speaking for me, but think about it this way. Your fingernails and your hair are made up of protein. Like, muscle isn't the only thing. Most of your body is made up of protein from a flesh standpoint. So your hair and your fingernails are made up of protein, and they grow a hell of a lot faster than your muscles ever will. Potentially, I would even postulate, even on steroids. your hair and your fingernails are growing a hell of a lot faster than your muscles ever will. And no one ever says you need a lot of protein to grow hair and fingernails. For some reason, muscle is a different tissue. And this is kind of a weird thing in our fitness culture, is we have these very well-established, accepted rules and principles when it comes to fitness, of things like calorie balance and nutrient density and all these other sorts of things. They're like, yep, that's the way things work. But then you go on a different topic, like building muscle or doing cardio or something, and suddenly we behave as if we fell into an alternate dimension and the principles and the rules are completely different. And like, no, we're still dealing with the same rules, but we behave differently. And I've addressed this ad nauseum in the past of like, protein surplus for building muscle. And it's like, in no other area of nutrition is a surplus of something ever beneficial or ever even useful. It's what about a water surplus? Nope. What about a vitamin mineral surplus? Nope. What about a carbohydrate surplus, a fat surplus? No, any nutrient, anywhere nutrition for any purpose whatsoever, surpluses are either always bad or they're inert across the board. And yet when it comes to protein or calories for building muscle, it's like, oh, suddenly the rules changed. Like, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to pick and choose the rules you're playing by. The Wright brothers, when they started to fly airplanes, they would say, can we turn gravity off? That would make this whole flying thing a heck of a lot easier. You know, if we just didn't have gravity because we're trying to fly. Gravity can work all other times, but if we're trying to fly, turn off gravity. It's a weird thing about our perceptions of fitness is we think the rules change because we're in a different scenario, but it's like, but they didn't. It still holds true in the same way. So when it comes to protein, long story short, coming back around, like we have a need for it and a capacity for it. So getting some is good, potentially, maybe more is better if you're not getting enough. But if you're getting enough, again, more isn't going to help you. And that's not protein, that's nutrition. That's the basics of nutrition right there. Zabe coming on. Hey, Matt, what is the simplest stretching moves would you say to loosen up the entire body in the least amount of time? Very good question. So a couple of things. First and foremost, I'm a big fan of the hand clasped exercises. So hand clasped and stretch straight on up, like so. Hand clasp, stretch behind the back, like that, and get into a very deep lunge with a twist. There you go. Those three things right there will pretty much take care of you. And I do those on a daily basis. Very good. And it's like, will it give me a 180-degree Van Damme split between two semi-trucks? And no, of course not. But when it comes to basic stretching and mobility that we can all just benefit from, and we all need more of these days because we sit so much, those three things will take good care of you. So once again, just hands clasped, straight up and straight back. And I know I'm tight because I had my bike ride earlier. And then you just get into a super deep lunge and you twist to each side. Good for the hip mobility and the stability as well. It doesn't need to be like this super like long stretching session or anything like that. MK follow-up question. So you are saying you can build lean muscle tissue without being in a caloric surplus. Well, of course, a surplus by definition is not necessary. That's what a surplus is. And put it this way, right? When I got into racing in college, I doubled my caloric intake to meet my caloric demand of the racing schedule. I went from like 2,000, 2,500 calories a day to like 5,000 calories a day. So I doubled my calorie intake over the course of like several months. Was that a calorie surplus? Absolutely not, because I was using it. A surplus is an amount of something you're not using by definition. I keep saying that all the time because people think they've got to get fatter to build muscle. And muscle and fat are two totally different tissues. They are built and they are broken down for different reasons. That's like saying if I grow my fingernails out, I'll finally have hair again. It's like, why? No, they're totally different. They have nothing to do with each other, kind of thing. Now, yes, you want to eat enough for sure. If someone is a sedentary couch potato, they start working out in the gym and they're like, dude, I'm so hungry these days. Like I had that happen all the time. People start working out and they're going from very little activity. They're lifting hard. I mean, strength training can spike up the appetite like crazy. Like I need to eat more. I'm like, yeah, definitely eat more. but it's not going to be a surplus because your body's like, dude, you're finally doing something. Give me food. But that's not a surplus. You're just meeting your calorie demand kind of thing. That's just simply called eating enough. That's all that it is. And again, that's that we think the rules are different because of a different scenario. It's like we fell into another dimension. My chemistry teachers used to say this all the time when we would balance out chemical equations and stuff, and I'd put a number in a certain place, and they're like, you're not God. You can't put that number there. You can't just make 3 hydrogens just pop into thin air. You're not able to do that. You have to deal with the atoms and the molecules we have here, Matt. You can't do that. But we somehow seem to think that's how muscle works sometimes. Like we're supposed to just let the rules change and stuff like that. Fluffy coming on. What do you think of Charles Bronson's training method? I don't. To be perfectly honest with you guys, like I pay almost no attention to anybody else's training method whatsoever because I'm paying more attention to mine. I'm trying to make mine better and everything like that. So I know it's kind of like the internet. Everybody's changing like reviews around and everybody's stuff. But to be perfectly honest, like I don't really pay much attention to anybody. Hardly anybody. Yeah, I mean, there's the Cavadlos and gold medal bodies and stuff like that. But I honestly don't really pay much attention to what anybody else is doing as far as books and stuff like that, just because my attention's just on what I'm doing. It's not that I don't care. It's not that I'm not interested. It's just your attention is finite. If you only have so much, you got to put it into one thing kind of thing. But I think I did read Charles' book like years ago when I first got into calisthenics. And for the most part, I think a lot of stuff out there is just the same thing with different packaging. Like my grind style calisthenics, there's nothing special about that. There's nothing unique. You open it up and you're like, oh, push-ups. Oh, weighted pull-ups. Yeah, like in every other calisthenics training book. Like, oh, okay. It's just the structure of it's a little bit different. It's addressing a few things that I think many people may be missing. But you pick up any calisthenics book and it's all 95% of it going to be the same stuff, just written in a different flavor, which means that's the good stuff, right? If something is valid and fundamental, you'll have people saying the same thing across many different sources. Because when you get down to that rock bottom fundamental level, it's always the same for everybody. So if someone's like, I'm going to write a book on building muscle, I'm going to write a book on building muscle with calisthenics, I'm going to write a book on building muscle with weights, the information on how to do that is largely going to be the same throughout because it's always going to be the same. We don't change gravity because we're using a different tool. All right, good one here, Matt. Is training periodization important? Absolutely. But let's get down to really simplifying what the hell that is, because I know a lot of people like to get complicated about periodization. Like they start turning into Einstein in front of the chalkboard and they're like, okay, I got my push-ups and in this block and changing over there. Basically, all the periodization boils down to is you're changing how you're training over time. On a monthly basis, bi-monthly basis, weekly basis. You could do this a million different ways. You could do it around sports schedules. You could do it around preferences. But the bottom line is that you don't keep training the same way all the time. Okay? So if you're, for example, doing push-ups, you have your normal push-ups and you're like, okay, 3 sets of 10 kind of thing. Okay, great. And then after a month, you're saying, okay, I'm going to change up to harder push-ups. So I'm doing 5 by 5. So now the resistance is much higher. And then after that, I'm going to go with more of like suspension push-ups. So that way I've got a stability challenge and I'm going in sets of 15 to 20. So basically you're exposing your body to a variety of stimuli. And that's really where a lot of the value is that we want to focus on, because especially when it comes to performance, building muscle and stuff, the bulk of research says there's no one best way. And chances are, if you're only doing it one way, you're missing out. So if you're like, this is the best rep range, or this is the best exercise, or whatever, then you're going to be missing out, because our body thrives on the variety of stimuli within a construct. So you can do different rep ranges and resistance, but you're doing the same exercise. You're still in strength training stuff, but you're exposing it to a wider range of stimuli. That helps prevent injury, it prevents burnout, it helps to create a change and a stimulus. So you do something for a given amount of time, and then you say, okay, body, now work on this. Oh, this is a little different. Okay, I got to make some changes and stuff. There's just so many benefits to it, but don't overthink it. All it basically is, do something for a while, then change it on up. Now, the Grind Style Calisthenics program that I have for free here on the RDP YouTube channel follows that program, because every month is a new workout. And every month I'm changing things up on you, different exercises, different intensity levels. You don't have to think about it. You just do that program each month. So down below, I believe in the description is the first month. If you want to check that out, it's the video for month 1. Totally free program, but that can take care of it all for you. Very good. Hey, thanks, Anime Life. Yay, 100,000 subscribers. Thank you very, very much for that. It's been a long time coming, but much appreciated. Thank you for the props. Emma K, hey Matt, when I do pistol squats, I feel the flexors on my extended leg tight. What can I do? Keep doing them. That's exactly how it should feel. So one of the benefits of pistol squats is you're lifting up the opposite leg in front of you, of course. And that extension is extremely important. Your hip flexors for bringing your leg up play a lot of role in sprinting, climbing stairs. Anytime you're going up an incline, you have to pick up your knees higher. Kicking is a really big one. Even if you're not kicking very high, like if you're a soccer player and you're kicking below your knee most of the time, it's still extending the leg out in a very forceful manner. So those muscles are typically very underconditioned and very underdeveloped in a large group of people, many people. And it also helps with the lower cross syndrome, lower back pain, all these sorts of things. So you're struggling with it right now because they're just unconditioned. When you do pistol squats, normally what ends up happening is you're bringing up your leg to the limit of your range of motion. So you're getting a little bit of a stretch in the hamstrings and you're really working those muscles. Most people never work their hip flexors to that degree. And as a result, they struggle with it. So staying on it and sticking with it, now they're going to get stronger and they will cease to be the weak link in that chain, and it's going to be very beneficial for you. So you're on the right track. I know it's a little frustrating. I have a little bit more of an imbalance. My left side is a little weaker than my right one, but you're definitely getting something that's going to be very well worthwhile. Question on fasting here. Hey, Matt, I've been intermittent fasting 20 on 4-hour feeding window for about 3 years. I'm 20 years old and I do all my resistance training and cardio fasted. Do you recommend this at my age? Well, I don't think age has too much to do with it there, John. It's more of just, is it benefiting you? Okay, so the number one thing that we want to be paying attention to whenever we're using diet and exercise strategies and stuff and saying, gee, is this good and stuff like that? And people say, well, what are the results by? I say, pay attention to your energy level. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why the healthy eating approach here at RDP is about pay attention to your 4 appetites, one of which is your energy level. Good diet and exercise habits should leave you with more energy than draining it. So if you feel like your approach is like, oh man, I'm just struggling through these workouts, or at the end of the day, I'm struggling, or before my feeding window, I'm struggling. Look for that struggle. This kind of goes with what I was saying earlier, how we think it's got to be a struggle. If your diet or your workout program is inducing a struggling state where you're just getting through it, change needs to happen. Because a good diet and workout strategy should be relatively easy to follow for the bulk of time. Yes, when you're preparing for the bodybuilding show and you're going for that last 20%, that's not going to be easy. There's going to be struggle there. But for the bulk of your training career, this shouldn't be hard. This shouldn't be a struggle to do. You shouldn't be feeling like, all right, how do I get motivated to do this sort of thing and stuff? So if that's the case, or it may not be now, but in the future, it will be, like say your lifestyle changes because you're 20, you're going to have a lot of changes come up in the next 10 years. You could just find yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't have energy towards the end of the day. My workouts are starting to suffer. It's like, okay, give yourself a bigger feeding window, 6 hours instead of the 4, or give yourself 2 feeding windows or something like that, or just go with more of like a just skipping breakfast kind of approach to the fasting, or just don't even fast at all, just 3 square meals a day, whatever the case may be, but change it up as your situations dictate. But if they don't feel like they warrant any sort of changes now, don't worry about it. Keep on going and rocking and rolling. Question, hey Matt, what about exercising throughout the day or night? So kind of like a grease the groove approach where you're getting things. That's totally what I do. I don't really have a whole lot of approaches where I'm like, okay, life, time out. I'm going to spend an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, and I'm going to work out. Then I'm done with my work, and I'm like, time in, and I go. Because you can see, like, I got my pull-up bar here. So I like to just kind of get stuff in when and where I can and where I feel like it. So I'll put a pot on the stove, start boiling water, come over here, do some leg raises, go over, excuse me, check my email, get that taken care of. That's right, I got to send out that thing, come back, do some more leg raises. So this whole approach, which is a little bit more easy to do with calisthenics, but I've heard of people doing it with, like, free weights. You have a barbell in the garage, go out to do the laundry, do a couple of deadlifts, change the laundry over, come back to pick up the laundry, do a couple more deadlifts, that kind of thing. Because remember, our bodies don't know what workouts are. It's not going to, like, the stimulus isn't there because we wear special clothes and work out in a special place and do something called a workout. The body's just always saying, okay, what do you need me to do? What do you want me to do? Oh, you need me to pick up this heavy thing? Okay, great. That's a bit of a challenge. I'm going to have to change and adapt in order to make yourself stronger. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are behind that. You could do it throughout the day. You could do it all at once. You can do it chunked up. It's really like, as all you need is that stimulus. That's what I talk about in my book, Micro Workouts. It doesn't matter what exercises you do, how you're doing them, how you're working out or whatever. As long as you're creating that stimulus, you're telling your body to change. That's what tells your body to change, regardless of what you do, which gives you a lot of freedom, which is awesome, because that's the whole point of RDP, is to give you the freedom to say, work out however the hell you want. Train however you want, whatever fits your preferences, your resources, your lifestyle. Same with diet. I don't care what your diet looks like. Just satisfy those 4 appetites. You get your nutritional support for your hunger. You get your palatability and your enjoyment of food. And of course, it's supporting your energy level. You're good. Those are the 4. That's all you need. It doesn't really matter what the particulars are, but you should manage those particulars in your circumstances to satisfy those things. So that's a great thing about working out, is I don't care what you do and how you do it, just create that stimulus of telling your body, I need you to do this 1% better than before, and it will respond in kind. Mentioned, next question here. Mentioned in the comments, you might do a video on this, but just hey guys, I don't know if my phone just suddenly crashed. Are we good? Are we back? That was really strange. I've never had that happen. I'm sorry if that just suddenly blacked out. Maybe it was just on my phone and you didn't see anything, but my phone just totally boom, shut down, and now hopefully I'm back. Anyway, let me try and answer this question for you. I hope you're getting it here. But anyway, you mentioned in the comments, you might do a video on this, but curious if there's a nutshell point for it. Exercise 2 days a week, still beneficial with calisthenics only for strength and building. Absolutely. I think I beat that horse to death. Train however the hell you want, twice a week, once a week, 5 times a week, 5 times a day, kind of thing. Of course, we've got to manage our intensity and our recovery. So the more energy that an exercise bout requires, the more recovery you're going to need. Like, I just rode 2 laps on Green Mountain. Like, that's more than I usually do. I'm probably just going to chill tonight, kind of thing. I'm not going to go out and ride again. But we're all so different with that. Like, some of us can put an hour in the gym and be ready to go the next day. No problem. Great. Go for it. Others are going to put 5 minutes into a push-up workout and the next day be like, I can't move my arms. Oh my gosh. Like, okay, you're going to have to get some recovery from that one, sort of thing. So play it by ear, sort of thing. But yeah, you can work out however many times you want, whenever you like, as long as you like, as hard as you like. It's one of those things that it's more about being aware of your ability to create that stimuli. That's our compass needle. That's what you should follow. Like, if I do it this way, is that going to be good? Well, the real question is, if I do it this way, am I going to be able to create a stimulus of making my muscles work harder or improve my golf game or whatever? If the answer is yes, go that way. If you're like, no, I'm going to be too tired, it's going to ride me down, okay, then go in a different direction. We're always using that sort of thing. Okay, good. Glad everybody's on here. I think StreamYard's not posting the subject there. Sorry about that, Grateful Muslim. It's just That was really strange. But then again, my tech vortex strikes again. Oscar coming on with a clarification. What I mean, does that mean I can build significant muscle doing daily activities, grind style, like tensing my legs when walking upstairs, squeezing out of grocery bags and stuff like that? Don't knock it. There's a lot of people I know who have exactly that sort of thing going on. It's like, dude, how in the world are your shoulders that big? It's like, I don't know. I just load, sacks of grain all day, like a sort of deal. It's possible, but the more we get out of a structured approach, the greater the chances are we're not getting a progressive stimulus. We want to be able to have an approach to our training and our exercise that we could say, yes, this is getting better. I'm doing this at a higher level than I used to. And that can be harder when I'm just, standing and like flexing my quads while waiting in line at the bank or something like that. That stuff still adds up, but it's not the work that makes the body change. We don't change just because we work hard or tell the body to work hard. We change it by creating a delta. The delta of this is how I did it. Now I do it this way, which is better or stronger or faster or somehow improved and progressive. That's what that stimulus is. That's where we're telling our body to change. So if things are too loosey-goosey and kind of subjective and you're like, I think maybe it's better, as you're leaving that stimulus up to chance sort of thing. TuneLink 415 asks, any advice for a nutrition plan for someone living with an eating disorder, binging and purging type of disorder? Those are rough, man. I've been getting mentally stuck between trying to lose fat and gain muscle for quite some time. Yeah, this one's not too uncommon. So disorders are all emotional. Like there's no science or logic behind this type of behavior. And that's the first step, is your behaviors from eating disordered patterns. Speaking as someone who has suffered disordered eating patterns most of my life, I also studied it in college, it's not about like what we think logically. That's oftentimes what we're most aware of, but it's all about how we feel about things. So when we binge, it's because of how we feel. If we purge, it's because of how we feel, kind of thing. So you're getting stuck between two feelings, two emotional states. And the first is being that you got to eat a lot to build muscle. You don't know that. There's no research behind that. You just feel you need to eat a lot to build muscle. And again, it's relative to you. Like, how much do you need to build muscle? Well, right now, your feeling is more, a lot. That's how you feel. You're not basing it off of nutrient counts or anything. You're just basing it off of, I got to eat a shit ton in order to build muscle. But then because you're overeating, because you're in a surplus, when you're in a surplus, you get fatter. You're starting to get fatter, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't very good. And then you feel, I've got to start dumping this. I don't feel good being this soft and big and heavy. So you feel you've got to start cutting back, and you just keep pinballing between back and forth of feeling like you got to eat a lot and feeling like you got to not eat or at least get rid of calories because you've done that sort of thing. So this is why, again, I address the idea of the calorie surplus. Like, people say, well, what does it matter? Like, if someone just eats a lot and they build muscle, what's the big deal? And the reason is because people feel differently about eating to excess than eating enough. There's a very different emotional state between the two. Because when we're eating enough, we're satisfying our appetites, we feel good, we look good, and we perform good. When we eat too much, we don't look so good, we don't feel so good, and we're struggling. Okay, so that, again, that's the fundamental rule of just nutrition in general. That's not a protein thing. That's not a muscle building thing. That's how food works on a fundamental level. Eating too much is detrimental. So we got to get and address some of these feelings. Now, I know that's not the best way to go about it, because people want, well, just tell me what I need to do, or just tell me the number of calories I need to eat. But this is not a logic problem. This is an emotional problem. This is a feeling problem. So we need to address the feelings you have of needing to overeat versus the need and the feelings to purge or undereat or exercise or whatever your purging habits are. And we got to recognize that neither of those are going to be helping you. So we want to avoid the circumstances that promote those feelings. So coming back to that idea of feeling like you need to overeat. You don't. Your muscles, nothing in the body grows because you overeat, including muscle. And again, we think the rules are different. Like we grow muscle because we overeat. We don't grow anything in the body because we overeat. You don't grow bone, you don't grow skin, you don't grow hair, you don't grow your fingernails. Nothing in your body grows because you overeat. But for some reason, we think we're in this alternate dimension where we think the rules and the laws of physics change because we're just trying to build muscle. For like our muscle is in a different dimension and the rest of our body is here in our dimension or something. The rules are not any different. So eat to hunger, first and foremost, and stop to satisfaction. Get enough. So if you're hungry, eat. But eat to the point where you're like, I'm good. Not full or like stuffing yourself, just like, I'm good, and be mindful about this. I recommend eating in ways that give you a lot of control. Like don't just be plowing through a big, huge thing from Chipotle in front of a TV that you just plow through and you're like, oh, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. We want to build your awareness and your feeling of eating enough. And you're like, okay, half this burrito. Oh yeah, okay, satisfied, good. Put the rest in the fridge. Your food budget extends. Awesome, very good. And then you're just like, okay, I don't need to eat. And then later on, you're like, getting hungry. Now that could be 20 minutes later. It could be 2 hours later, whatever it is, but you're like, I'm hungry. Good. Now you go get that extra piece of burrito. You want to base your strategy for getting out of this off of how you're feeling because you're in it because of how you're feeling. We're going to use your feelings and your emotional state from overeating and undereating or purging and flip it so that way you feel good about not being in those places because you feel like crap when you overeat because it's not healthy, and you feel like crap when you're purging. Both of those are unhealthy, and they're not helping you. They're not helping you lose weight. They're not helping you build muscle. You may feel that way, and again, we've got to address that, and you're going to have to do a little bit of mental, like, self-psychiatry. It's like, why do I think? Why do I feel? Again, it's not thinking. If we could just change our behaviors by thought, we'd do it like that. Like, don't do that. Oh, okay, great. But our behaviors are based off of how we feel. Fitness is based on a feeling. Fundamentally, human beings are emotional creatures. Your emotional state controls 99.9% of your life. Your education and knowledge controls the rest of it, which is why I did the topic of this week's episode. Fundamental or subliminal beliefs we hold that are holding you back because these are things that are changing and controlling how you feel. You control and change how you feel. You can change and control your destiny. But you can learn everything there is to know about exercise and diet. And we can have logic debates on calories and calorie surplus and protein surplus and all this stuff till the cows come home. None of it matters one tiny iota. Because if you don't change how someone feels, nothing happens. Advertisers have known this for years. You want to get people to buy your product? Change how they feel about the product. And that's why I'm saying we got to change how you feel about overeating and feel about undereating. Neither of them are helping you. And that's hopefully going to be the domino that creates a cascade of some change here. Very good question. Very good. Really hope you can get out of that. Disordered eating habits, they're tough. They're really, really tough to crack. I mean, you're talking years of work to get out of that situation. But I promise you, if you get through it, though, you got a hell of a lot better life on the other side. Way better life and more fitness, more muscle, more strength, leaner body. Everything you want is on the other side of that type of binge purge cycle. That binge purge cycle keeps you stuck where you are now and prevents you from going to where you are. Okay, one more. We're talking about skinny fat body types. Do cardio, just exercise for strength, muscle only. Again, skinny fat's not a real thing. It's a marketing term. It's a marketing term we've got for programs and stuff like, are you skinny fat? I'm like, everybody's playing the same game here. Again, fundamentally, we're all in the same boat. Everybody's playing the less fat, more muscle game. Bodybuilders, people wanting to tone up, everybody's doing the same thing. We created this skinny fat term just kind of like, I don't know, to put a label to something. And once you got a label, then you can create things as if it's a different thing, but it's not. You've got more fat than you want. You don't have as much muscle as you want. Welcome to fitness. Welcome to like everybody else in this game who is trying to say, I want to be leaner and I want to have more muscle. Same sort of deal. So again, the rules aren't any different. The rules are the same. progressive workload for the muscles, make them build up, and monitor your diet so you're not overeating, and increase your caloric expenditure for whatever you want to do, bike riding, aerobic parcheesi, whatever you want to do. Just get the calories flowing out of you, manage your diet, work those muscles. There you go. That'll take care of you for that as well. Oh, what the hell? One more. Robert S. Thank you for coming on, my friend. Question, my right side is overall stronger. During exercise, I catch myself using my right side more. And after training, I often feel my right side is more sore. What can I do about that? Well, be mindful about using your left side a little bit more. Imbalances between your right and left side, very common. Everybody has them to some degree. And if you're well balanced, you're probably going to flip back and forth. Nobody's dead level on this sort of thing. It's like, oh, my right side's stronger. Several months later, oh, now my left side's stronger kind of thing. So you're always kind of teetering back and forth. So be mindful of how you're using both sides is the bottom line. Are you, when you're doing like push-ups, for example, are you kind of leaning to one side? When you squat, do you kind of shift? Take videos of yourself, watch yourself in the mirror. You're just looking for discrepancies between your right and left side when you're training, and try and minimize those discrepancies. And then, of course, you can always play around with unilateral exercises as well that really highlight those things, like lunges, single arm work, pushing and pulling and stuff, because that highlights, you can't compensate with the stronger side. When you do lunges, it's like left side weaker, right side stronger, left side weaker. Okay, because now it's being highlighted more, and that side will catch on up. All right, everybody, I am out. Thank you very much for coming on. We will do this again next week. Hope you enjoyed. Roughly around 2:30 p.m. As always, come with your questions. And thank you very much. And as always, the audios for the initial portion of these are available on your local podcast directory. Links to all resources that I mentioned down below, as well as the Red Delta Project library of all the books like Grand Style Calisthenics, Micro Workouts, Isometrics, and so on. Thank you so much. Talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.